All right, welcome everyone. We're about to dive into something pretty mind-bending today. We're going to talk about how the things we experience in the first few days of life can actually send these echoes down through generations, like a biological memory that literally shapes the future.
So let's just jump right in with the big question, the one that this whole thing is built around. Can you inherit an experience you never actually had? Is that even possible?
Well, the science is getting clearer and clearer. It turns out that really profound experiences, especially when you're very young, they don't just, go away. They can leave a real physical mark on your biology. Scientists have started calling this a biological memory. It's like an adaptation that gets written right into our cells. Okay, so how on earth do you study something that complex, right? I mean, you can't exactly run these kinds of experiments on human families. So scientists got creative. They came up with this really clever model using mice to mimic a very specific kind of early life stress. It's called repeated cross-fostering, or RCF for short. And the key thing to understand here is what it's not. It's not physical neglect. The pups get plenty of food, they're kept warm, everything they need physically. What it is an unstable caregiving environment. Think of it like having a different caregiver every single day. That crucial bond with one single consistent parent, it's just never allowed to form. So here's how they do it. A brand new litter of pups spends day one with their actual mom. Simple enough. But then, on day two, the whole litter gets moved to a completely new foster mom. Day three, another new mom. And they repeat this every single day for 4 days. The end result is that each little pup has been cared for by 4 different mothers. It creates this profound sense of instability right from the get-go. Okay, and this is where things get really, really interesting. The scientists didn't stop with the mice who actually went through all this. No, they waited for them to grow up and have their own babies, and then they looked at their babies, and then their grandbabies. And here's the kicker. None of those later generations experienced any instability. They were all raised in a totally normal, stable environment. So what did they find? Well, first they tested how the mice reacted to a universal danger signal, a puff of high CO2 air, which kind of feels like you're suffocating. The results were just stark. The mice from that RCF family line, even generations down the road, they hyperventilated way more. It was this crystal clear sign of a heightened anxiety response that had been inherited. Then they moved on to pain. They had this little device that would apply a gentle heat to the mouse's paw. And again, a huge difference. The mice from the RCF line yanked their paws away so much faster than the regular mice. It showed they were way more sensitive to heat. And it wasn't just heat. The pattern held up for other kinds of pain, too. They tested them with a bit of pressure. And yep, same thing. The RCF line mice had a much lower pain threshold. It's like their body's internal alarm system was just cranked up to 11, permanently on high alert, always scanning for danger. And that brings us to this number, which is really the most jaw-dropping part of this whole thing. 3. This heightened sensitivity, this biological alarm system, it wasn't just in the original mice. It was passed down for 3 full generations. We're talking about the great-grandkids showing the biological effects of something that only their great-grandmothers ever went through. It's wild. But hold on, because there's a twist. It turns out that the effect of this instability might all come down to when it happens. A totally different study adds this really fascinating layer to the story, showing us that when it comes to this stuff, timing is absolutely everything. So, this other group of scientists asked a simple question. Does it matter when the instability happens? They did a similar experiment, but this time with rat pups, and they split them into 2 groups. One group went through the cross-fostering in the first few days of life. The other group experienced it later, between days 9 and 11. And the results? Couldn't be clearer. The pups who got the unstable treatment in that super early window, days 1 to 3, they never formed that critical bond. They couldn't learn to recognize their caregiver's scent, which is a huge deal for their survival. But the pups who went through the exact same thing just a week later, they were totally fine. They formed a normal attachment. It tells us there's this sensitive period, this tiny critical window for bonding, and if you disrupt that window, the consequences are huge and they last. Okay, so let's circle back to our first study, the one with the 3-generation legacy. We can see that this trait is getting passed down, but the big question is, how? I mean, how is a memory of an experience physically passed from a parent to a child to a grandchild? Well, the answer seems to be these little things called acid-sensing ion channels. Let's just call them ASICs.
The best way to think of them is as your body's molecular harm detectors. They're proteins on your neurons that freak out when the acidity around them changes. And that's super important because that's how your body senses danger, like the CO2 buildup when you can't breathe or the inflammation when you get hurt.
And bingo, this is where the scientists found their molecular smoking gun. They looked in the brains of those RCF lineage mice, and what did they find? The genes that make these ASIC harm detectors were turned way, way up. And not just anywhere, but in the exact parts of the brain that controlled the stuff we saw: breathing, pain, and anxiety. It was like a molecular switch had been flipped to on, and it just stayed that way for 3 generations.
So that leads to the million-dollar question, doesn't it? If this is a molecular switch, can you turn it back off? Okay, so first, let's just remember the before picture. Here on the chart, you've got your normal mice with a normal pain response, and right next to them, you have the RCF lineage mice with that clear inherited hypersensitivity. Got it? Okay, now watch what happens. So the researchers brought in a drug called amiloride. What it does is pretty simple. It blocks those ASIC channels we were talking about. Basically, it's a way to go in and manually turn down the volume on those overactive little harm detectors.
And boom, this is the result. It's absolutely stunning. With just 1 dose of this drug, that inherited hypersensitivity, it just vanished. The RCF mice started responding to pain just like the normal mice. Think about that. The biological echo of something that happened 3 generations ago was completely silenced with one simple intervention. This proved, without a doubt, that those ASIC channels were the key. And this is where the story gets really big because obviously this isn't just about mice. This research has some massive implications for us, for human health.
I mean, we already know that adversity early in life is a huge risk factor for things like anxiety, panic disorders, and chronic pain when we're adults. And guess what? We have the exact same ASIC harm detection system. In fact, scientists have already linked variations in our human ASIC genes to panic disorder. So what this mouse research does is it gives us a potential roadmap, a biological pathway that could connect a stressful childhood directly to adult illness.
And you can tell the researchers are really excited about this. They actually wrote in their paper that they think targeting this system could be a viable therapeutic avenue for things like panic disorder and some types of pain. I mean, what that suggests is a future where maybe we can treat the actual biological root of these conditions instead of just chasing the symptoms.
So it all leaves us with this one last, really powerful question to think about. We've just seen how the echo of hardship can be physically passed down through generations, and it just makes you wonder, what else are we passing on without even realizing it? You know, the good stuff too. Things like resilience or maybe even joy. What else is part of our inherited echo?